bloXroute is layer 0. Is operating underneath the blockchain. So we operate at the network layer. What does that mean? Well, you might run a node, and I run a node, and a bunch of people run nodes, and they send blocks and transactions to one another. We operate in propagating transactions, propagating blocks. We're a faster internet for blockchains, might be a good explanation for it. And so let's break it down even further and even more simply. The way blockchains work is that, let's say I want to send you 1 Bitcoin. I create a transaction. The transaction says, oh, send 1 Bitcoin from my account to your account, and then I sign it. So it's a cryptographic signature, which shows that I am in charge of where the money is coming from. And then I create this transaction, and I send this transaction out there to the peer-to-peer network. Everybody hears it. And then after a while, a validator or a miner, depending on the blockchain, would hear all these, they all hear these transactions, would aggregate all these transactions that it hears into a block. It's successfully created and add that to the blockchain. So every so often, somebody would create a long list of transactions, a block of transactions. And the result is a chain of blocks, right? The blockchain, which contain all the transactions that ever happened. So what we do, and that's how blockchains work. That's kind of like the TLDR. What we do is that we allow blocks and transactions to propagate faster. So we kind of like keep everybody in saying, like, oh, here are new transactions, here are new transactions, here are new transactions. So everybody knows all the transactions waiting to be mined, waiting to be added to the blockchain. And people call this, in Ethereum, it would be the mempool. There isn't really such a thing as the mempool. There isn't a single one, because at any given time, I might know a few transactions, you know other slightly different transactions, like maybe I know one transaction you haven't heard about yet. And by the time we sync, you already know 3 transactions I don't know, and I know 2 other new. So there isn't a thing, the mempool. Each one has a slightly different perspective. And what bloXroute does is keeping everybody knowing the same mempool. So if everybody knows the same transactions, when you mine a block and you want to send it to your peer, you don't actually need to send the entire block, like a long list of transactions. You can just send the metadata. You can say, oh, I have this block. It has transaction 5, 37, 103, 404. And when I receive that, I know what is transaction 13, 47, 404, etc. So the block can be compressed and decompressed on the other side. You don't need to trust us. You don't need to trust anybody else. You still validate the block. When the block propagates on the wire, right, when you send these packets over, and again, I'm a networking guy, so this is my angle. When you send the block on the wire, you just send smaller pieces of data, because if everybody knows the transactions, you don't actually need to